Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all an update to my Cardfight Vanguard Overdress Zorga Alchemagic deck profile for post A Brush with the Legends. With the second Cardfight Vanguard booster set, we were given more support for the Alchemagic deck, with the main unit being Zorga. Really happy with the new support. We really needed that pressure that this deck could go against with your opponent, whether it be an additional critical, just retiring your opponent's rear guards. We needed those different normal orders to provide that power with Zorga, the unit that can give us 2 Alchemagics in a turn, and then just have the power with the Persona Ride and all of these different cards, building a deck that can definitely go up against a good amount of other different cards in the format we currently have. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the Ride deck. The Ride deck really hasn't changed much since the last couple updates I've done to the deck. So we're still with the Dream Nibbling starter. When wrote upon, if you went second, draw a card. And there's just other options for the Ride targets with Rancor Chain on Vanguard Circle once per turn. You Soul Blast 1, draw 2 cards, choose 1 order card from your hand, discard it. And if you did not discard, choose 2 cards from your hand and discard them. So this just helps to set up the drop zone with some of our other order units in our hand. We can perform Alchemagic as soon as we go into Zorga, with our grade 2 being Black Tears Husk Dragon. When this unit is placed on Vanguard, choose up to 1 normal order from your drop zone and put it into your hand. So the draw 2 will give us a lot of cards in our hand. Even if we discard with Rancor Chain, we can at least add back the card with Black Tears Husk Dragon. And you have to remember also, you just choose an order from your hand with Rancor Chain and discard it, but you have to add a normal order with Husk Dragon for the card when placed on the Vanguard Circle. With the last of our Ride deck consisting of Mysterious Rain, Spiritualist, Zorga, with this one being our main go-to grade 3, and actually our only grade 3 in the deck, with us running 3 copies of this card. When you would play a normal order, you can bind a normal order with a different card name from your drop zone, and Alchemagic. You combine the costs and add the effects for the cards. And then also on Vanguard Circle, once per turn, you can counterblast 1, choose a card from your drop zone, and call it to rear. So this gives you consistency for all the new cards we added to the deck, and so you can have some proper rear guards to provide pressure against your opponent with the different attacks you can do. But the Alchemagic is the most important part of Zorga, just being able to give you 2 different order units in 1 turn against your opponent, so you can retire units, gain extra criticals, power up your front row, you name it, with all the different ones we run. And that is it for the grade 3s. For the grade 2s, still running the 4 Inheritance Maiden Hendrina. Not only does it help to set up the drop zone, but also giving you the option to retire this unit until the end of the turn. The rest of the time you would Alchemagic in order and play it. You may choose not to pay the cost of that card's Soul Blast. So with it, you don't have to pay the heavy cost for a good number of cards, because you only have so much limited soul unless you Persona Ride, building up that soul again with this deck. So you want to be able to have options with this card to at least have free cost of that. And if this card's in your drop zone, you can every turn call it back with Zorga, as long as you have the Counterblast to use. And even with the Counterblast, we were given a new grade 1 unit in a Brush with the Legends set, so we don't have to actually pay the cost for that for some of our Alchemagics also, which we'll get to when we go over the grade 1s. For the other grade 2s, I dropped down the number of Black Tears Husk Dragon we're running and just stuck to it being the only one in the Ride deck, because once you Soul Blast this card, you can call it back to the field from the drop zone. But for the new grade 2, I am running 2 Fleet Swallower on rearguard when this unit attacks. If you did Alchemagic in order this turn, you Soul Blast 1 until the end of that battle. This unit gets plus 5,000 power, and when your opponent would call cards from their hand to the guard circle, they must call 2 or more cards at the same time. So they can call a Sentinel. It still won't be enough to guard, though. They'll have to place 1 additional card. So even if your opponent has the lower number of cards, let's say they have the 2 Sentinels in their hand, they'll have to place both of them down for this 1 attack. And you can have the 1 additional attack to go up against with your opponent. So most of the time, they might even just try and go for the trigger unit. I only run 2 of this card because you can set it up into the drop zone and then just call it back out into the field with Zorga, and that's what you can do with a good majority of all the different units we run in this deck. So that's why I feel you only really need to run smaller numbers of a good amount of the cards, unless obviously they're the cards that would set up the drop zone to begin with. And that is it for the grade 2s. We'll now move on to the grade 1s. I'm running 3 of the Rogue Headhunter on rearguard. If you played in order this turn, it gets plus 5,000 power. And when this unit is placed on rear, the next time you would Alchemagic in order and play it this turn, you reduce the cost of the Counterblast. So with this card, reducing the total cost, it does not countercharge, even if it becomes negative. But still, very, very useful for some of the other orders we run in the deck for just being able to stop the counterblasting and just give us the power of those cards altogether. A lot of the other normal orders for Alchemagic reduce the Soul Blast with the help of Hendrina, which Soul Blasting was a good majority of them. But with a couple other ones we got from the Brush with the Legends booster set, the Counterblasts are definitely brought up again with those ones. With I think we only had one normal order from the previous set that relied on Counterblasting. So at least with the setup for the rest of the deck, we can rely on our Rogue Headhunter for reducing that cost for the Counterblast and still providing a 13k power boost, or even just the option if you played in order with the 5,000 being able to attack against your opponent, and if you had a Persona ride, hitting bigger numbers with this card and all of our different order units. And lastly, for more of the setup for the grade 1s, I also run 2 Sleeve Tugging Bell. When this unit is placed on rearguard, you may put all of your cards from your bind zone into your drop zone. If you do, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until the end of the turn for each card you put. It's a 7k grade 1, but still very, very useful because then you can just recycle some of your order units. Let's say you don't have these specific ones you want in the drop zone anymore because you Alchemagicked all of them away. This card can provide power boosts, but also recycle power. It's definitely here for the recycle power. I'm running 2 of it just so we can see a little faster into the drop zone, and the chance that this card does end up in the damage zone and we're unable to heal it putting it in the drop zone for us to call back. So just the 2, so you have those better odds of having this card being able to be set up with Zorga. And then for the final grade 1s, just the 4 of the Planner Prevent Dragon, the Sentinel Choice, the guarding against your opponent. As always, if you have the 2 in hand, you guard with the 1. As long as you have the 1 left in your hand, you don't have to pay the discard cost, meaning you have 2 guaranteed guards against your opponent. So if they get an over trigger, you can at least protect against your opponent's Vanguard, so they won't give the power to that. And then whatever additional unit they gave the 100 million to, if you're at 5 damage and you need to block that attack. And that's it for all of the units. For the normal orders, we are running 4 of the Spiritual Body Condensation. This is still probably one of the best ones in the deck with a play with a Soul Blast of 1. You choose a card with a grade equal or less than to your Vanguard from your drop zone, call it to rear, and it gets plus 5,000 till end of turn. So whether you call some of your setup cards or some of the cards that have more pressure against your opponent, or even some of the new grade 1s, you have plenty of options, and then power up with those cards, being able to give Headhunter the additional 5,000 power along with its own, meaning you can hit for 18,000 power by itself against your opponent. But if you Persona Road or used another order with Alchemagic, even higher numbers against your opponent with just that 1 grade 1. And for the other order units, I run 3 still of the Grief, Despair, and Rejection. Play this card with the Counterblast 1. If your Vanguard is Mysterious Reign Spiritualist Zorga, choose 3 of your units and they get plus 10,000 power until end of turn. So unlike the Persona Ride where it's just the front row, you can give this 10,000 power to even some of your units in the back row, providing boost for some of your other ones you have on the field. I like it at a 3 of, and with Spiritual Headhunter, reducing the Counterblast, this card can be Alchemagicked without using the Counterblast, which I definitely do like to save for Zorga in this deck, and with his skill to bring cards back onto the field that much more easily. And for one of the new orders in the deck, I am running 3 Regurgitation from the Underworld. You play this card with a Counterblast and a Soul Blast of 1. You choose any player's rear guards, retire it, and choose up to 1 card from the same grade as that card from your drop zone, call it to rear. If this card is part of Alchemagic, you may choose up to 2 instead of 1 to call. So not only can you take out one of your opponent's rear guards, it gives you the option to then call cards onto the field. So a big help there for sure. And this card uses a Counterblast and a Soul Blast, so whether you use Hendrina or Headhunter, you can at least reduce the cost for those cards if you were to Alchemagic with this card instead of adding it to your hand. I definitely do like to Alchemagic with it, so you have the 2 cards to call out. And lastly, for the order units, I also run 2 Nectar of Sensationalism. Now, this is in here for that needed pressure for my rear guards. You have the critical power with the trigger lineup, but with this one, you choose one of your rear guards to the end of the turn. It gets plus 5,000 for every 5 cards in your drop zone. And if your drop zone has 15 or more, it gets critical plus 1. You can easily set up 15 cards in your drop zone to use with this card, and it's a free cost otherwise. As long as you have the setup, you can just Alchemagic with this and not have to use any Counterblast or Soul Blasts for it. So 2 move it so you can at least have it in the drop zone. And even if you get into the drop zone late game, it's even better that way because that's when you want to see it, because then that's when you'll use it against your opponent for that pressure with one of your rearguard units. And that is it for the normal orders. Moving on now to the triggers. I'm running 7 critical this time around. I definitely do like the pressure. I had draw triggers last time, but they just ended up drawing too many cards. I was decking out too often. But with the 7 critical, I have that pressure early game. And then with just the other additional cards I run in the deck to use against my opponent, depending on the setup I have. I'm also running 4 front triggers still. This time around, though, running the new Frenzied Heiress. It's just the one of choice, because I can be much more defensive with this card, giving the plus 5,000 shield against my opponent. And lastly, the heal trigger of choice, the more fitting Elegy Pixie, for it definitely has the more grand blue vibes with it. And the over trigger is the Bless Savior, the additional heal and power plus to the front row. When I reveal this card, I would say of all the decks I play, this is the one over trigger I definitely see the least often, just for how many times I mill this card to the drop zone with all my different cards, especially Hendrina. So when I do resolve this card, it definitely does get me out of some major jams, because this deck definitely does take damage pretty easily when I'm trying just to set up more and more counterblasts to use. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoy the video. It definitely feels like I've done a good amount of updates for Zorga. Definitely up there compared to Overdress, but this deck and Overdress are 2 of my favorites from the new format. So I hope you all enjoy the updates I do with this deck as the new sets come along. I don't know what cards we'll get for Zorga with set 3, but I'll definitely maybe be mixing around some numbers, and we might see an additional update to this deck in the future as well if some major changes go down with it. So as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.